So what we've already done, you guys, in terms of our charcoal work, we have already learned the basic 3 ways of applying charcoal in the beginning. We've learned, hey, that you want to initially think about method one, which is light layers, building up layers of vine charcoal only. And then the second method we said was to look at the items in your still life and look for the strong darks and lights. And again, we said doing that, you only want to use vine charcoal. The third method was establishing the overall grays that we see in objects. And again, all of this was only done with vine. And so today we are entering what Ms. T calls phase 2 of your charcoal drawing. And if you look on the whiteboard over here, you're going to see that I actually have up a kind of an image that compares the phase 1 and phase 2. It's kind of under the clock on the whiteboard. But it says phase 1 is only using vine. That's what all of you are doing right now. The second method, no matter how realistic you make it look with that vine phase, the second phase you add compressed. You're also going to notice that Ms. T has set up spotlights on the still life. That is to really accentuate the highlights and to make the shadows even darker. So it gives you a lot more contrast to play with. So what I'm going to be doing right now is showing you, I've done a really quick 3-minute or so sketch of this glass bottle so you can kind of see what I've done. And obviously the screen view, what you're seeing through the camera, picking up on this, you can't see completely all of the subtleties that I'm seeing from my view. The camera flattens that. But what I want to show you is how to kind of look for as much as you can in the image here and compare it to this one, and how we're going to solidify and increase our contrast. To increase our contrast, we're going to need some new tools that I'm going to be teaching you right now. Obviously, we've not used our compressed on these drawings yet, so we're going to be using our block compressed. We're also going to be using one of the school erasers, the bigger erasers like this one. And of course, we're still going to need our vine charcoal because we're going to use that to help blend. You're going to need a pencil eraser. This is for all of the small details. The other new addition, which is super exciting for some of you, is what is called a charcoal pencil. The charcoal pencil, you only use that at the very end of your drawing. This is for very fine, small details. The charcoal inside of this pencil is compressed, so it's really, really dark. It is not erasable. We usually only use the pencil on the small, super linear edges of things, or on very small forms, like the beads, for example, in all of your drawings are very small. So you might need something like this, because it's harder to get an edge with this one. So let's kind of jump right into adding and solidifying our contrast that we've started with vine in our drawing. So what you should look at, if you've not in your drawing, when you start doing this, if you've not come in and created darker variation with your vine, you should do that first. So come in first on the areas that I see in my item where it looks darker. I'm going to come in and put additional vine charcoal. Always start with the vine first. The vine is actually really going to assist with the blending of the compressed. Then I'm going to come in on top of that vine I just added with my compressed charcoal, which is significantly darker. And I'm going to blend this right in on top of the vine. If you forget, and let's say you come up and I put some compressed charcoal up here that I didn't have enough vine, you can always come in and add more vine on top of it like this. The reason we want to make sure that we add vine charcoal into the compressed is because it's going to help that charcoal blend more evenly. It also, believe it or not, helps when you erase. If you make a mistake and you've got vine under the compressed, it actually makes it come up a little easier. And I'm going to hold this up and let you see it before I do any of the blending with it. You can already, I hope, see on the camera, and I'm going to hold this up. Can you already see that that's getting significantly darker and more bold? If you look at the drawing in person, you can really see it. Now what I'm going to do, of course, using my finger to blend, and I'm going to look at my objects in my still life, and I'm going to see where do I have super darks and where do I have just darker, okay? So I can actually use the charcoal that builds up on my finger and put that in some places like over here. This is a darker area, but it's not as dark as this. And so rather than having to always apply it directly from the charcoal stick, I can actually use the residue that's on my finger and pull some of that nice dark in places that I need it, so it doesn't get as dark. Does that make sense to everybody? Now the other thing that you're going to do kind of at the same time that you're working with your compressed and coming in and putting that beautiful rich darkness in certain areas, you're going to be of course thinking about erasing the shiny white areas. I'm going to just show you real quickly how to use the charcoal pencil. Normally if I were doing this drawing on my own, I would come in with the compressed stick to do my bands around the top, but just to show you how this works, when you come in, you use this exactly like you would a piece of charcoal or a pencil, so you can draw with it like a pencil point. But again, making sure as you're putting that down that you're putting some vine down with it. Make sure there's enough vine to help it blend. Now, one thing about any kind of contrast work, the nature of spotlights on drawings and the nature of really strong light sources, wherever you tend to have a really super strong highlight in a drawing, that means the white areas, usually somewhere very close by, you're going to have extreme shadows. They kind of go together. So make sure that you're looking for where the strong lights are and the strong darks at the same time. And I'm going to show you how to erase some of that in just a second. Blend in some vines. And in just a moment, we're going to use our second most important tool, which is our eraser. So I'm coming in right now and looking where I see those subtle darks, putting in just a little bit more plain vine in on my drawing. My favorite part of these bottles would be these little bands around the top, and that's why I really love still drawing this. So it's a little bit harder than the vases that you guys are drawing, which are more simplistic. They're just kind of cylinders. So you're going to have longer, probably thinner highlights in yours that are going to look a little different. But I really like the complexity of this bottle. It's been a fun challenge to do multiple times. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my erasers. And remember that the erasers, there are two different types and they have two different purposes. The larger school erasers are really great for taking out bigger shapes. So let's say I'm looking at this and I realize, oh my goodness, I made this whole area right here a little too dark. I can come in and create what we call a planar erasure. That just simply means I'm erasing with the side, creating like a flat plane. Okay, taking out bigger shapes. I could do the same thing here. I don't really need to, but I'm going to show you with that. And you see it lightens that entire area. The second one, of course, is our pencil eraser. And this is for our really fine point, things that need to be clean edge erasing. And on this particular bottle, I don't have this strong spotlight. I'm using the window light. But you can see that there's a trail of highlight that goes right up the side. The lightest part of this bottle actually is right here on this corner, so I'm going to come in and work on that in just a second. And I'm going to come in and re-establish my cleanup edges. And so the last part, again, as we mentioned, you are going to be using probably your charcoal pencil and your vine in tandem to do your finishing edges. And there's a nice, really beautiful dark near this highlight. Like Miss T said, wherever there's usually a super strong highlight, there's going to be a super strong shadow that accompanies it. Now this highlight is not as strong as these up here, so I'm pushing that back with a little bit more charcoal. And I'm using the vine at this point. And now I'm using all of my tools together. So I'm using a combination of vine, compressed, and the eraser as I work. And then I'm also seeing some reflection of the window light above here and the overhead light, so I'm going to erase those in and keep working on this. For your vases that are longer and thinner, like this one, you'll have longer, thinner highlights. Is this making sense to everyone? Does everyone kind of understand what I want you to do? All right. What Miss T is going to do is I'll stop the video and then I'll continue working on this for a couple minutes, build up a little more of the contrast, and then I'll show it to you again after I do a little bit more work on it, okay? You may continue working.